To be here, and I just want to first off start with an acknowledgement of thanks to our colleagues, Keith Babion, the student trustee and the president of the Ontario Student Trustee Association, Jeanette Martin, the executive director of Anchor, and Dr. Lena Ajameri, who's part of the Child Development Institute. And I'm very grateful to our friends at the Civic Center Resource Library and to Vaughan Public Libraries for hosting this wonderful event and for the incredible work they do in supporting learning recovery in Ontario. I am proud to say that Ontario has established itself as a leading jurisdiction when it comes to being a top performer in math, reading, and science. However, we know this pandemic has led to significant disruption at home and abroad for students. For many students, it has left them struggling with mental health challenges and with learning loss. And while we are grateful to see these students once again being back in person where they belong, we know that they perform best in the classroom. And yet these disruptions have created impacts in reading and in math, in confidence of students. So with the support of the Chief Medical Officer of Health of this province, we have made investments to keep them learning in person, and that has been critical. For the 21-22 school year, for this school year, we've provided our public education system with record funding and additional staffing to keep students and staff as safe as possible. In fact, we increased investment in public education by $584 million to a total of $25.4 billion. But we know that learning recovery journey for many students is not over and will require additional supports, tools, and investment. And that's why today I'm proud to announce a plan to support learning recovery, focus on academic achievement, and the mental well-being of our province's next generation. Now, since coming to office, we have increased funding in public education in each and every budget. Today, I'm proud to announce we are going to be increasing education funding even further. We are doing so with a projected total of $26.6 billion for the coming school year, for September 2022-23 school year, a historic level of investment coupled with a detailed plan to support learning recovery and positive mental health. This is an increase of investment for the coming school year of $683 million, 2.7% year-over-year increase, more than 9% than in 2017-18 under the previous government. Now, we're making these investments because we know all students deserve the opportunities to succeed, and we want them to benefit from a world-class education system that prepares them for the jobs of tomorrow and the rapidly changing and competitive global economy. Now, as part of this investment, we're putting in place a learning recovery action plan that is focused on our publicly funded systems with an expansion in reading, in mathematics supports, and in mental health. It includes targeted programs to support the continuity of learning, student resilience and mental well-being, and our continued effort to modernize Ontario's education system. We have 5 points to the plan, and it is anchored by a major expansion of investment in tutoring. We know that so many students have realized gaps in some of the foundations of learning. And so our government today, following great advice from student leaders, from school boards and parents, and so many others, we're announcing $175 million of tutoring expansion in publicly funded schools, the single largest expansion of tutoring ever in this province by any measurement, that will allow children in all schools, all publicly funded schools, to have access to small groups on average of 5 students available after schools, sometimes during schools, during spares, for example, and on weekends, and using the partnership of community organizations that are credibly involved in academic success. This is going to make a massive difference to help your children learn the gaps that have emerged over the past 2 years. The second component of our plan also deals with expanding virtual tutoring supports by expanding Eureka and Mathify to more grades for more students, using more days and hours to access more students in this province. We think that's very critical to utilizing 2 platforms that are teacher-led for one-on-one tutoring supports that are available for all children in both languages in Ontario. We are also announcing focus on mental health, which we think is very important to the success of students next year. And we realize the great impacts that this pandemic has brought on so many young people in Ontario. And it's why we increased investment to $80 million for school-based mental health supports, which at that point was 400% higher than where we started in 2017-18. We invested $80 million last year as a pandemic response, but this year we're making that a permanent fixture of our announcement today. It will be permanently invested within our schools, and we're adding an additional $10 million more dollars, working with incredible organizations like the Children's Development Institute and others to increase access to care and to help kids get the treatment they deserve wherever they are. This is a compassionate investment that we think will yield a long-term improvement to the lives of children and their academic success and confidence as well. Now, for the upcoming school year, we also recognize that our educators are going to be, on the front lines as they have been this year. And so we're going to be instituting mandatory professional development to support them when it comes to student mental health and well-being, to arm them with the greatest evidence, the tools, and the resources to make sure that their children in their classes are safe and that they too have the resources to keep themselves supported in the classroom. We are also doing two important consultations, launching two consultations today that we think are very important. In partnership with the Ministry of Health and my colleagues, Ministers Elliott and Tibolo, we'll be launching consultations with the aim of creating an integrated student mental health strategy to lift up access to care both in communities and in schools. We think this is important. It'll be the first in this province. And we're also going to be launching consultations, working with the Ministry of Health, pediatric partners, school boards, educators, parents, and the students themselves on the potential creation of a graduation requirement specifically focused on mental health promotion and wellness, to embed that right into the curriculum that we teach our children. The focus of our plan really is on building up those numeracy and those literacy skills that we know have faced some elements of regression in many children's lives. We want to get those basic foundational skills back up and get these kids back on track when it comes to their performance in the classroom. The overarching focus of this plan is more investment. It is additional dollars reaching classrooms, school boards, and students in the province of Ontario. We think that is critical, which is why we're investing over $680 million more for the coming school year, and a learning recovery plan that is significant by all standards, to have that after school, in school, and of course weekend-based tutoring led by educators and other education staff and professionals that could help lead instruction, help these children get back on track within the school system. We're also providing a great deal of increased investments to help at-risk kids. And that concludes children from the special education community, a $90 million net increase year over year, the highest investment ever recorded in the province's history in special education, to help those children that most especially have faced difficulty with the pandemic. We believe these kids need that support, which is why we're doing so, and we're very committed to their success. We're also ensuring that racialized children, Indigenous, Black children in the province of Ontario have added supports, because we know this pandemic has been disproportionately difficult on those kids especially. And no one will be left behind. We want to see them succeed, lift up their performance, build their confidence, and give them a credible pathway to success in the school system and in the economy once they graduate. And so we are increasing investment for both to support de-streaming, more access to staff, and more specialized supports, particularly in math, to help those children. That is going to make a difference. As well, this year, we are renewing an investment in staffing, a time-limited investment, over $300 million in staffing that's going to help us hire an estimated 3,000 frontline staff in schools, be it more teachers, more EAs, more ECEs. More of the individuals are going to make a difference in the life of your child when it comes to learning recovery. More frontline individuals that can help keep these kids as safe as possible, yes, but on track academically and bridge the gaps that have emerged in this province. There's a great deal of detail in our plan. It focuses on increasing investment in public education to the highest levels ever recorded in our province's history, over $680 million more than last year. It includes a learning recovery plan, a detailed plan informed by evidence that's going to allow for an expansion of tutoring in all publicly funded schools in English and French right across Ontario. It's going to allow more virtual learning options for students on tutoring. It's going to permit a mental health increase and lift that's going to profoundly improve access to care in the school and in the community. And finally, it's going to focus the education system on job and life skills, on transferable skills that help students succeed, that give young people a competitive advantage in an ever-changing global marketplace. So that is our vision. It is a positive vision for the coming school year, a more normal return to school, one supported by more staff, by caring individuals in the classroom, and by our entire government and the full resources of Ontario behind our students and their success. I do want to note and conclude with a message of gratitude, because I think we can all appreciate this has been another extraordinary year in the life of a student and in the education space. I want to thank our students. I want to thank our student leaders like Keith, who are with us today, as well as many young people and the voices of our trustees and council presidents who've spoken up to talk about mental health, to talk about the need for learning recovery, to talk about tutoring expansions that are free and accessible for all children, that remove barriers to progress. I want to thank our educators for an incredible level of hard work, and the parents of Ontario for a great deal of strength and courage to keep their kids motivated, keep them going as we work together to get Ontario children back on track. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to a student leader who's doing amazing work in this province, Keith, the president of the Ontario Student Trustees Association. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Lecce. Hi, everyone. As you may recall, my name is Keith Baybayon, the student trustee for Toronto Catholic District School Board and the president of the Ontario Student Trustees Association, l'Association des élèves conseillers de l'Ontario. It is a pleasure to be speaking with you all here today. As student well-being has always been a key pillar under OSA ACO's advocacy, we constantly emphasize that a student can only be truly successful when they are mentally and physically healthy. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on all students, although students shouldn't be debating whether their academics is more important than their mental health. They shouldn't be struggling to find the mental health supports they need to succeed. It is also incredibly important to place an equity-focused lens on tackling these disruptions to ensure that we support the achievement of all students, as many of them come from backgrounds that can bring about so many challenges and struggles throughout their lives. This investment being put forth today by the Ontario government is a crucial step in bettering the well-being of students. We are excited to see the change that will come from this student mental health strategy and see other stakeholders, from students to teachers to community mental health organizations, come together and continue to be further involved. I'm pleased to see the government placing important focuses on different aspects of student needs, ranging from tutoring supports, reading supports, and especially the de-streaming curriculum transition programs. We cannot expect to return to full normalcy when we haven't been in the normal sort of aspect for 2 years. These investments will ensure that our students remain as a top priority in public education as we continue to experience the changes within our world. The road to education recovery will be a challenging journey, but this historic decision will pave the way. Thank you. I'd now like to pass it off to Sharnette Martin, the Executive Director of Anchor.
Thank you so much, Keith. Good morning, everybody. I am very pleased to be with you here today. My name is Sharnette Martin, and I'm the Executive Director of the African Canadian National Coalition Against Hate, Oppression, and Racism, or often known as Anchor. We work closely with the Ministry of Education to combat anti-Black racism and ensure that Ontario's schools are safe, welcoming, and inclusive centers for all students. Today I'm here in my capacity as a teacher as well as a mother. There's no doubt that COVID-19 has been difficult and frightening for all Ontarians, and especially our children. When the schools closed for in-person learning, students had to temporarily forego interacting with their friends and their teachers. And we know that a fulsome academic environment is crucial for students But peer-to-peer interaction is also crucial to their social development. Children learn from each other in and out of the classroom. Many teachers pivoted to remote learning, but we know that in-person learning is essential for the mental health and academic achievement of our students. As a mother and an educator, I can tell you that too many of our students have fallen behind in their studies, and too many students have reported feelings of anxiety, sadness, and depression. These students need our help. We need to take action. Today's commitment from Minister Lecce means that we are seeing not only an increase in funding for education system, but dedicated resources that students need to support their mental health, healing, and recovery. This major investment in mental health is critical for children and youth who may be feeling isolated, uncertain, or simply struggling to cope with an environment that has been changing so rapidly around them. Investing in the mental health of our children is crucial. As a teacher and parent, I know it will make an impactful difference to our children and students. And so we want to thank the Ontario government for its ongoing commitment to support this learning recovery. Like many parents, I know this last year has been so disruptive, and these targeted supports will help many students recover, providing them with the support they need to succeed in key areas such as reading and math will help them to reach their full potential. So thank you, Minister Lecce. And now I'll pass it off to Dr. Lena Ajameri, Director of CDI.
Shernette, thank you. And I especially loved how you spoke from both a professional and as a parent, because I too am a parent, and one of my daughters actually works in a day treatment classroom in Peel, so know exactly what our children are going through. First and foremost, I want to thank you, Minister Lecce, for the invitation to join you today for this really special occasion announcing this historic investment, and especially also to the Ontario government for investing in our children and our youth. On behalf of the Child Development Institute, CDI, it's absolutely an honor being here with you. As an accredited children's mental health center, we have been helping children, youth, families, and communities for over 114 years. The last 2 years have been really hard for our children, our families, and essential workers like educators and mental health workers. And I've been saying since the onset of this pandemic, the most detrimental impact that we will be dealing with for years post-COVID will be the mental health and well-being of our children and our youth. It's critically important that we all work together. It doesn't matter whether you're a school board, a community-based organization, a mental health organization, families, and government, to implement, and this is the key, evidence-based best practices, proven strategies, and specialized programs and services. Our kids need it, and they absolutely deserve it. This pandemic has really heightened our mental health crisis, and it is through, which I really love what this announcement is also about, is about cross-systems partnerships with education and health, that we can create better processes to support all of our children. The good news is kids can be, and I say that cautiously, extremely resilient. However, that's if we actually build the right protective factors and put in the right supports, promote healthy relationships, and implement proven mental health strategies. We can help ensure happier and healthier children and youth. And we see this every day at CDI in our own practice and our own programs, for example, like SNAP, that helps children increase emotion regulation and self-control and gets them to really learn to stop and think before they act and make better choices in the moment. We are really fortunate to have some excellent mental health workers and educators in Ontario. This funding will help provide the much needed supports to enhance learning recovery, build resiliency, and student mental health. I want to leave you with this quote from Dr. Carrington. Every time you think of calling a child attention-seeking this year and years to come, consider changing it to connection-seeking and see how your perspective changes. Thank you. Right now, I'd like to invite Minister Lecce back to the podium. Thank you.
Just a reminder, it's one question and one follow-up. First question.
Your first question comes from Chris Rishowi with the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you.
Hi,
I'm
Chris.
just wondering, with regards to the province resuming spring EQAO to help build some kind of plan for intervention, I mean, we're 2 years into the pandemic now, and I'm just wondering why there was no tracking of some sort done before and why there's no plan already, given we are 2 years into this.
Well, part of the plan today is actually to reinstating grade 3 and 6 EQAO assessments in reading and writing and math after that 2-year pause, done in part based on the advocacy of many education leaders who suggested that could have had material impact on the mental health of children given the stress of the past years. We now are at a point where we believe we need to be able to better understand the problem, which is why measurement tools are critical. So reinstating grade 3 and 6 assessments is a positive first step. It creates a new baseline for student performance. We also just conducted a student mental health survey to better understand the impacts of this disruption on students themselves. And so that type of approach will continue. It's obviously augmented by additional tutoring supports to lift up performance. And I think one of the great anchors of today's announcement is that $175 million in tutoring expansion, so that whatever the challenges that emerge in the classroom, be it in reading, in writing, in math, and those foundational skills, that those are resources in place. There's staffing, an additional $300 million, and of course, a plan to help those children improve their performance and ultimately succeed.
Follow-up?
And just looking at the GSN funding level of $26.1 billion, which you said is 2.7%, it's a 2.7% increase. Right. I'm sure boards are going to be feeling the pinch of inflation, which is about almost double that at the moment. And I'm just wondering if there's any more funds coming, if inflation was being taken into account for the upcoming school year for school board funding.
This represents a 2.7% net increase year over year, 9% since 2017-18. It is $680 million more in publicly funded education. And in every single year for the past 3 years that we've been in government, increased investments have been delivered for schools. This is obviously the most significant infusion of funding. It includes a learning recovery plan that has the $175 million in net new funding to expand tutoring in all schools for all children who will need it. Teacher-led, it could be EAEC-led. The point is small groups, high impact, both during school, after school, and on weekends. In addition, we're announcing $300 million to create essentially a COVID temporary staffing fund that's going to help ensure that we could hire roughly 3,000 more staff. That is going to help support quality learning and reduce learning gaps in the classroom. And finally, when it comes to net new investments, we're increasing investment to the highest levels in special education, an additional $90 million more, over $3.2 billion. That's the highest investment ever delivered for special education. $90 million in mental health, 420% more than where we started in 17-18. Over $2 billion in net new investment over the past 3 years. All of this is designed to create an education system that puts students first, that focuses on the recovery. And of course, that's going to be bolstered by the tutoring, the summer learning expansion this summer, and a variety of new supports for specialized groups, including racialized kids, Indigenous children, who have disproportionately borne the price of the pandemic. That compassionate lens is what we're applying to everything we do, and we think these increased investments are going to serve all school boards well to improve education for the coming school year.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Allison Jones with the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. We heard in the technical briefing earlier today that Ontario is going to be requiring school boards to offer a remote learning option for one more year. I'm just wondering if you could explain the reason behind that. given the sort of broader reopening plans? And, the Premier says everyone is done with COVID.
Well, I think first off, our commitment is to keep children in school. The priority of this government is in-class learning. There's nothing more important to the mental, physical, and social emotional health of a child than to be in school with their peers, with their friends, in front of our educators. So we accept we accept the premise that children are best in schools. There are roughly 150,000 kids this year that exercise that choice. What I've heard from their parents and from some educators who are involved in virtual learning is that is a strength for that small minority of children. So we're going to continue to offer it, recognizing our priority, our investments today flow in schools to ensure we keep them as safe as possible, that we strengthen quality, we improve access to tutoring and mental health in the school system, and that will continue to be our focus as we move forward to September.
Follow up?
Yes, I was just hoping to ask about childcare negotiations also. Where are those negotiations at? It's been more than 3 weeks since the Premier said we were very, very close to a deal. And Minister Gould is saying that Ontario still hasn't submitted its detailed financial plan yet. So I'm wondering if you could update us on where we're at.
This government is fully committed to landing a good deal for Ontario families, a deal that will reduce prices and increase access. And I look forward to announcing that deal as soon as that negotiation wraps up.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Lorenda Redikoff with CBC. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. We've heard from pretty much everyone that the majority of students do best in person. Is there a plan to get rid of that plan you had previously for high school students to have online classes?
Well, first off, Ontario families retain the right to opt out at any point. So any parent that believes or student that is just not a form of learning that works for them, opt out today. With that said, what we have done is ensure that every school in Ontario as of this year under our government has access to internet, which is an important innovation in 2022, no less, where virtually every single publicly funded school is now connected to the internet. That's going to help ensure equal access to that type of learning. We've invested in connectivity within our schools, $40 million more invested to do that, to help us purchase more tablets. There's literally over 300,000 more iPads and tablets available to students who will need them, particularly kids at risk. But at the end of the day, we appreciate that it is a choice parents will make and students will make the best decision for themselves. We have upped our game in this province with high quality online learning courses, but I recognize full well, as I would, if I were in schools today, would opt for in-person learning. I know that's important. It gives you the full complement of learning, benefiting with access to teachers, but that choice will be made by families. And of course, we'll continue to make sure the quality of online learning remains very high in this province for those that choose it.
Follow up?
Why do you want to increase the money for summer school?
Yeah. Well, first off, last year we had the largest summer learning program ever. 150,000 students participated. I think this year it's going to be important. That's why we've expanded it an additional 10 million with a real emphasis on special education children, because it allows kids to redo courses that perhaps they didn't perform well in this year. It allows some students to reach ahead to next year's courses if they want to sort of get ahead of them in the curriculum. And it also allows for tutoring supports in the school system, small groups that are being invested starting now. That funding will flow immediately. You'll start to see programs being set up perhaps into March, but by April they will be established across Ontario. And as well, those will flow into the summer and into next year all the way up to December. So we really believe summer learning is an opportunity to get the students back on track in various courses where they have faced challenges, with an emphasis on reading, on writing, and mathematics, those core foundational skills. We've expanded the investment by 10 million. We've added the 175 million in tutoring. And I will note that another element that is important is the early reading investments, $25 million allocated so that we can, in the earliest years in elementary school, assess the performance of children when it comes to reading, because we recognize literacy skills are critical. And we also recognize from a lot of parents and educators, they're seeing stagnation, but in often, regression when it comes to the capacity of a child's ability to learn. We're in a library today, a place that makes literacy exciting and empowers students to learn both independently and with support of their school system. And so we think all of this comes together by allowing school boards to have more funding to assess reading capacity and then allocate additional investments and interventions to help those kids get back on track. So all of this is important, and it really starts to scale up as we look to the summer of 2022.
So we'll go to the next question, and this will be the last question from the teleconference line before we move to the floor.
Your next question comes from Sean Cohen with CHCH News. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi, Minister. Regarding tutoring for these students before and after school and on the weekends, who's actually going to be doing the tutoring? Is it going to be the teachers, private companies, private tutoring? Can you talk a little bit more about that, please?
Absolutely. So $175 million. This is an unprecedented investment. I mean, the GSN historically has around $10 to $12 million, I recall, in tutoring supports for school boards. This is a massive lift when it comes to allowing every single school in this province to have access to publicly funded tutoring. So to answer the question, it can be delivered by a teacher, by an EC, by an EA, by a post-secondary student that has some specialty in this area. We've really expanded the scope to allow more personnel, more people to deliver it. We think that's going to be important to give that latitude to school boards. The funding is for school boards, so it will be delivered through them. But also we're allowing some latitude to work with stakeholders in the community, nonprofits, for example. I think of Anchor and others that are already right now in the field, on the ground, helping to support students when it comes to learning, recovery, and mental health. So there could be specialized programs for at-risk communities, for example, where school board to leverage a credible local partner to help deliver that on weekends or after schools, or in some cases even during the school day themselves. So this is a massive investment. I mean, we're pairing that with the early reading supports, $25 million that I just mentioned, and the expansion of virtual tutoring, which is led by educators one-on-one, both for Mathify in English and Eureka in French. So this is a massive investment in learning recovery that we know is going to make a difference.
Follow up, and this will be the last question from the teleconference.
Okay, thank you for that information. And then how do students qualify for tutoring? Is it up to them, up to their parents, teachers, a combination of all three? Do they just ask? How do they qualify for the tutoring?
Yeah, we're encouraging school boards to make this available to the students that need it. I mean, we were taking a very an open approach to this. We want any student that believes that they face some learning challenges to get access to this support. It's why we've provided $175 million for the remainder of this school year and for the first semester of the next school year. That's a lot of investment in a relatively short period of time. So we think we have the capacity there. And that's why we've expanded access to more people to do it, to deliver that program, because we appreciate that there could be challenges with staffing in the context of the pandemic. But as we look forward to April and May and June, we have a great deal of confidence that we will be able to deliver this program from our school boards with a great deal of focus on lifting math, reading, and writing skills up in this province, getting these kids back on track.
Mr. Minister, good afternoon.
Hi there. Hey, Jeremy.
Scarborough School had a tragic event happen with a very young person being charged. What can you do for the students of that school? What can the ministry do for the students of the school? And what are they doing for the students of the school? And then on a bigger picture, this is a couple of homicides now. We've had very young people involved. And schools are a major point of contact with the youth. What is, on a big picture, what is the Ministry of Education doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I mean, Jamie, this is an incredibly difficult moment for children in Scarborough, for families, and I think for the entire TDSB community. And I want to offer my personal condolences to the students, to the staff, and the broader community, and of course the family. The circumstances of that tragedy are very disturbing, that a young man, 18 years old, can be shot at within a school premise. We take a great deal of focus, school boards, the ministry, municipalities, local police, all of us. when it comes to the protection of children. Nothing is more important, and I know that TDSB has been on site every day with the extension of mental health and counseling supports. Law enforcement has been active and engaged with community, and the ministry stands ready, as I've communicated directly to the school, our willingness to support them in any way we can to heal and recover through what is obviously an incredibly difficult and dark moment in the history of that school. That young man was a great light in that school. The principal spoke with a great deal of pride about the contributions and his can-do spirit and incredible kindness. And so it's a profound loss for all of us in the province, and the ministry, the government, the premier. We all extend our deepest condolences. We stand ready, working with law enforcement and school boards when it comes to the protection of children. We take a zero tolerance on this, and we work with law enforcement, with the Solicitor General's office, as a matter of course, on the protection of schools, our facilities, and our staff and students.
Follow-up?
No, this isn't a follow-up, change of question. Sorry, my throat's gone dry. Since we're done with COVID, when can students drop the mask?
We all want children to go back to normal. We just got kids back to class in January. That was so important. We felt so strongly about that, and we're proud to see kids learning in person, benefiting their mental and physical health. We just allowed some time ago normal semestering for high school kids. That is making a big difference to creating a more normal experience for students and a better learning environment for high school kids. We've just reinstated, with the full support of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, extracurricular sports, clubs, including high contact sports. This is really important, cannot be underscored. These things matter to the learning, the development of a student, the well-rounded leaders we're trying to produce and create and empower in this province. So that's the direction we're on. We are moving towards normal, and we're going to follow the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health to continue on that path so that we keep the kids and the staff as safe as possible. But yes, we get students in our schools back to normal.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.